going to be reading off the big sheets of paper here too. So, okay. So my first group there was coastal tenure activities and ocean dumping, and had some lively discussion with the group. Obviously, one of the big topics in regards to tenures was aquaculture. Many issues with that. First, and quite clear, were obviously the title and rights issues that are up front, and what that means, and as well as process issues with aquaculture tenure, the availability, the cost, and the issuance of those tenures. Again, going back to title and rights as well, is that these tenures are issued on a short-term basis based on the treaties and land and rights, and the title and land and rights issues that are going on. We also discussed the issues of privatization of the land, the water use, the missing data, the science data, and the socio-economic data that's needed for this. And in regards to the dumping, there was quite a lot of concern in regards to the ocean health. There was some talk of missing historical data, and also the cleanup of expired tenures that was an issue with people. And I think it's been echoed in some of the other sessions, as well as where the employment opportunities that needed to exist within the community. We also spoke about the overlaps and the issues of the federal and provincial jurisdictions in regards to aquaculture and wind, and there were other examples as well. There were some examples of where our group had spoke about First Nation ownership in the Upper Skeena, I believe it was, in regards to tenure and how that is working. But there was also some discussion on multinational or outside groups that own tenures, and what that means to a community, and the fact that the income leaves the community and perhaps the jobs aren't going to the people within the community. And also what those impacts from those outside groups happen for the community. And as mentioned, the expenses for the tenures are quite expensive and not really realistic for anybody opening up a family business. For our trend section, we talked about what did we talk about here? Kind of a short list. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Page 1. Okay. Okay. They just our discussions went around that there was difficulty with the tenure process and in forecasting. Going towards a more local economy and community process is something that people preferred. That there was an issue for that raising awareness of dumping sites, and that I guess more environmental assessments that are required. There was an example brought up in regards to forestry tenures, again going back to First Nations ownership, and that perhaps being an example of a positive example. The example that came up was in regards to salt marshes and eelgrass beds. Okay. We can make a note of that. I have dump sites down here, but I know that was the guy from the WWF and offshore. Okay. Okay. And the tenures that were held outside the treaties by multi-users, and was another example of or a positive example of where things could go and in the trends. The interactions are quite short on the group, and that was for future marine planning, and there was an example of a demonstration site for wave and tidal in Strathcona that was mentioned as well. Thanks. For the mining and energy, some of the issues were taxing and tenure. The tenure regime haven't been established. That there was talk of what's called an equity principle, which goes towards a sustainable development, and that if we wanted to move towards a more ecosystem-based management, that we needed to look to deal with how to deal with industries or groups that have been displaced, and it was said creative ways to deal with that. And so that's groups that are somehow displaced out of work because of another activity. There were issues brought up that in regards to when we spoke about mining, that currently there wasn't any engagement that seemed to be happening within the upper watersheds and perhaps even further than the Pensima border. There was talk in regards to upcoming future coal bed methane mining, and those issues will also have an effect on the marine environment, and a grid capacity problem having implications to Pensima as well. We spoke about the cost for cleanup of mining sites, and that currently right now it looks like the taxpayers get to pick that up. That there's issues on the monitoring of the tailings and off-grid tidal. There was expressed concern from those in the room from Haida Gwaii that in regards to mining and oil and gas exploration, and based on previous practices that have gone on in that area, that they don't support those types of initiatives. There were also some talk in regards to the regulations for mining, and looking at further deeper out in the water, the minerals and anticipated exploration and impacts and benefits that may bring, and look to that this Pensima process possibly is the place to bring certain unresolved issues, and that there needs to be a larger scope to understand what the resources are needed so that those conversations and issues can be dealt with. And again, there seems to be a lot of existing reports and documents that go back, and people want those reports and research to be used, that people outside community, or that when there is local, or when there, I guess with the mining and energy, that you need to locally hire, train, and provide provisions for the local community, and that sometimes, there was discussion that in the past that they have looked to provide local or provisions that you can only locally hire, but that is not possible. But it might be a way that in the First Nation community that they're not bound by those rules and then they could implement hiring locally. The trends being the greenhouse gas rules from the provincial and federal government. Trends being emerging technology and emerging and alternate technology. Again, grid capacity was brought back up, equity and sustainability, super regional trusts or royalty trusts, and then a call for green energy. And some of the interactions that they spoke of were the provincial, Des had brought a report that hopefully will be available.